Well, it's good morning from Galashiels. It's good day from Australia, and good evening from Illinois. Have I got that right, John? You're in Illinois.
Thank you, Paul. Glad to be here with everybody tonight.
Good stuff. I just wanted to we are having a bit of connectivity issues with John. Hopefully, we'll be back in a moment. Yes, Tracy, you're asking me how things have gone so far. They've been absolutely awesome so far. This might this might be problematic with the with the audio, but let's hope that we can get John back in there. Hi, John.
Okay, I got back in this time, so
excellent. Obviously, wanted to ask you a little bit about your the book Wrecking Crew with Kathleen Zellner. You actually did me a great favor and told me about the book about a month before it was published, and you said that you'd been working at it quite a while with Kathleen Zellner, going every couple of weeks to see her. How did that come about? I think we might still be having connectivity issues.
Yeah.
John, can you hear me?
Now I can. I lost you for about 30 to 45 seconds. You had just started to mention the Wrecking Crew and how we had conversation about it. I think before it came out, and then I kind of didn't hear what you said after that.
Sorry about that. I was just wondering how did it come about that you ended up doing the book with Kathleen
Oh,
Zellner?
okay. The kind of the premise with Paul was the fact that I was obviously working in Wisconsin, at the time that The Making Murder had come out, and obviously with the worldwide, interest and just the unbelievable reaction from people all over the world. I was in a position where I worked as a reporter, as a journalist in Wisconsin. So I did numerous articles over the next couple of years, 2016, 2017, spending time in Manitowoc and in Manitowoc, investigating the case. And just the more news articles I did, kind of the more I thought that it really needed to be, somebody needed to do a book that wasn't named Ken Kratz, or do something goofy like, Mike Griesbach did, those kinds of books. I mean, I got along with Mike Griesbach. We see the world from a different lens or different perspective, but I just wanted to make sure that that somebody like myself who, is unbiased, is independent. I had no stake in the game. I'm not related to anybody in the case, or a key person that was involved, pro or con for Steve Avery and Brendan Dassey are the lawyers. So I just thought that I was in the best position, being in Wisconsin, kind of being on the ground up there, to be able to spend a lot of time analyzing the case. And you guys did phenomenal work as well. So, certainly a lot of tips and suggestions from Tracy, you, and, and from, TikTok, Manitowoc, and so many other great people over the years. Certainly helped me and kind of gave me the motivation, and fueled my interest, in wanting to do, an independent look at the Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey case, to try to give people real perspective, rather than from somebody who had, something in the game like a Ken Kratz or a Mike Griesbach, so that's kind of sums it up, hopefully. My initial reasons, Paul and Tracy, for pursuing the Wrecking Crew book.
Tracy,
was there a stage? I'm just wondering, was there a stage while you were writing the book that you thought, yes, this is a breakthrough, that there's there's a piece of information here that has the potential to be, you know, a massive player in these cases.
I didn't hear that real perfectly, Tracy. Was your question along the lines of, you know, just trying to get the book, you know, out as far as making a major impact? Did I hear that correct?
No, what I was wondering is when you're researching your book and you're going through case files and you're going over the filings, was there a piece of information that struck you as being a breakthrough in the case?
Struck me.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, that's a good question. There's probably a couple different examples, but you know, I really tried to, even though it wasn't part of the Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey case per se, as far as the trial, you know, with Teresa Hallbeck, I thought the fact that I was able to spend some time digging in and researching the Ricky Hostetler case, the hit and run fatality of Ricky from January of 1999, which was would have been about 6 years before Teresa Hallbeck disappeared. So it wasn't a lot of time if you think about the grand scheme of things. I mean, it's been 5-6 years now since Making a Murderer came out. So if you think about it going backwards from Teresa Hallbeck, you know, it's been about the same time frame that, you know, we've all, you know, spent, you know, taking an international interest in Stephen Avery and Brendan's case. So I thought with the Ricky Hostetler information, it was really important to dig into that case to show, you know, the level of corruption and, you know, and the abuse of power that that a lot of people who've, you know, been around Manitowoc County have already experienced and know about firsthand, you know, and, you know, can see firsthand that if they're able to pull this off in the middle of the night, you know, with you know, a local teenager, you know, kid that you know, was just on his way walking home, you know, and he had a part-time job. He was a junior or senior in high school, you know, and he gets tragically killed. The fact that they went to such great level, you know, to make sure Tom Kasorik, I'm talking about especially, you know, went to such great level to fool the community, you know, and mislead, you know, Debbie Hostetler and other people. They were in a position to pull off, you know, something mischievous and devious, you know, when it came to the Teresa Hallbeck case, because they had already been through at least one major case where, you know, one of their own was suspected of being involved in the hit and run, and you would almost have to say to their credit, you know, I mean, well, the credit's not the right word, but that they were able to pull it off. So, I mean, nobody that was within the sheriff's department of Manitowoc County, you know, was ever held responsible, you know, for, you know, running Ricky over, even though, you know, there's strong suspicions that, you know, there was Todd Herman that may have been involved in that. You know, and Todd didn't want to talk to me when I called him a couple years ago to interview him, and the phone kind of went real dead silent. You know, it was a really awkward pause, you know, before he said no comment, and, you know, and then we kept doing a couple more no comments. So, I mean, if I had called you guys up, Tracy or Paul, and said, hey, I'm John Ferak from Gannett, Wisconsin Media, you know, I'm working on a story about Ricky Hostetler, you know, and I've heard that, you know, that you may have been the driver that hit Ricky, you know, well, what do you have to say? I mean, you probably tell me that I'm full of shit, you know, and that I'm a fool, you know, and, you know, why are you calling me? But like I said, with Todd, the phone just kind of, you know, went real long into this really awkward pause of silence, you know, before I realized, well, I better think on my feet here and ask him another question or two or three. And that's kind of what I did. And then I realized, well, he's just going to keep no commenting. So that in and of itself was kind of intriguing, and it kind of backed up suspicions. And I also thought, too, that it helped actually set the record straight, because a lot of people were incorrectly going around suggesting that Rob Herman, the sheriff, was the one that did it, when in reality it looks like, you know, Rob did go out there that night in the middle of the night. He was the one driving around collecting car parts, you know, which is really suspicious. He wasn't even working in patrol at the time. I think he was said that he was working in the jail at the time. So so for Rob, to be driving around working in the middle of the night, that just
Yeah.
kind of seems to kind of make more sense as far as that he would be more likely to be covering up for his brother rather than he did this, terrible tragedy and then, comes back to the scene. That just seems a lot, harder to pull off and stuff. So,
Yeah.
and the fact that,
Yeah.
Todd was gone for so long, so if nothing else, I thought that I hopefully, just by pointing that out, it gave people the context and some additional background, Paul and Tracy, to kind of see that, because there's a lot of people out there that are like, oh, I mean, come on, the police would never,
Yeah.
make up this kind of stuff against Steve Avery or Brendan Dassey. That's just too hard to do, And well, if you look back and see that they've already been accused, and may have had some strong success as far as covering up a big case involving a death, then why? Then in a lot of respects, getting involved in the Avery case would be, not that difficult for them to pull off.
Yeah. And across the 5 books that you have, John, have you found commonalities in the case? Like, do you find common, themes of misconduct or investigative error that draws you to those particular cases that you've chronicled in your 5 books?
Yeah, occasionally. The one that I thought that Kathleen Zellner has done a pretty good job of pointing out, with the Stephen Avery case involved that evidence that that Mark Wiegert had driven down to Madison to have Sherry take a look at the whole issue with the with the DNA and the swabs, and that always seems to kind of be a characteristic I notice sometimes, with DNA evidence that's tampered with or falsified, is that it's not necessarily somebody that's, that's going out continuing to do the testing. It's just the fact that they have already access to the DNA to begin with. And that happened in my first book that I wrote about like 6 or 7 years ago when I was out in Omaha, Nebraska, and I wrote about the book called Bloody Lies, the CSI scandal in the Heartland. And it was a prominent CSI guy that everybody knew, including me, and he kind of had a reputation for being a rock star, but then he was kind of, he wasn't kind of, he was overzealous. He really wanted to always be in the limelight, and he wanted other police officers to really think the world of him. And so he would get involved in cases where he thought that it was a slam dunk, where it was a sure thing that the lead detectives had gotten it right. And then he would come in and come up with additional evidence that just really, made the case, a slam dunk for the prosecution. And what happened was a couple big mistakes out in Nebraska on some false confessions that actually was very similar to Brendan Dassey, as far as just how it happened, whereas there was a young man in Nebraska that his aunt and uncle had been murdered in the middle of the night on Easter Sunday. And it turns out the killers were from about an hour away from Manitowoc. But at the time, the family members of the victims all pointed the finger at their nephew, just thinking that he was slow and odd and strange, and so he's doing everything in the world to cooperate with the 2 small town lead detectives. They're thinking that this was just a family murder, that this was revenge, that the uncle and aunt may have, cut him out of the will or just something outrageous like that. And he's doing everything he can to cooperate. Anytime the police want his fingerprints or a hair sample or a blood sample or to come re-interview him, he's doing, above and beyond, and in reality, they're looking at him as their only suspect in the case. So it's, at least in the Nebraska case, though, you had a prosecutor, though, that was very ethical and had a lot of integrity, unlike Ken Kratz. So the prosecutor in this case, 6 or 7 months down the road, realizes that the sheriff's deputies, although they may have been well-intentioned, probably made a mistake by arresting, the nephew and a cousin for the murder. So the prosecutor ultimately dropped the charges rather than take the case to trial and end up with a wrongful conviction on the case. So I have to give him a lot of credit, and the state of Nebraska credit too, whereas obviously none of that happened in Wisconsin. It certainly didn't happen. With Brendan Dassey, and we all know that after watching, his interview, at the school with Uyghur and Fassbender, that those guys just basically made up their own version of events, and they just, wanted poor Brendan to repeat back to them what they thought happened, and both of those guys obviously are idiots, and got the facts of the case wrong, but Brendan was manipulated, and went along, with their version, thinking that he'd get to go back to school, and that's that's sad, but like I said, so you asked Tracy about parallels of cases. Those are some that come to mind, and it's kind of interesting. But you always see Mark Wiegert in the middle of this stuff. He's like the Kevin Bacon of the of the Stephen Avery piece. So
6 degrees removed.
But anyway, so yeah.
John, going back to that Nebraska case, are we talking about David Kofod?
Yeah, Dave Kofod. Yes, yeah. People pronounce it different ways, but Dave Kofod, the Nebraska CSI investigator that ultimately, in his case, I should point out since you brought that up, but he ultimately was. The FBI got involved in that case in Nebraska, so the FBI ultimately did their own investigation of him, and they were able to get him indicted, and they had success. Getting him prosecuted. So he was ultimately convicted. His career ended, and he went to prison. He spent a little over 2 years in prison. And the good thing out of the case is that he never worked in law enforcement ever again. And I just remember always. I mean, his own sheriff's department, the sheriff that was his boss that hired him, did an internal investigation. When the heat was first starting to happen. When the FBI first started investigating him, Paul, any misconduct in the case. So that's a reminder to everybody why just because the police say that somebody's been cleared or they passed a polygraph, one of their own I'm talking about, that you got to be a little suspicious and do your own research, because a lot of times there's a lot more skin in the game and the stakes are a lot higher. Because obviously now that we know the facts on the Bloody Lies case with Dave Kofod, the question comes to mind like, well, why was he allowed to plant evidence for all those years? Why were his bosses?
Oh dear, we do seem to be having an issue with connecting to Illinois at the moment. Oh, here's John back again. Hopefully. Hi, John. Sorry, the internet is really interrupting us.
So, I was just trying to point out, though, with Kofod, the questions that came up was why didn't his bosses, do more? And I think that's certainly true with Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey, and certainly, with Calumet County and Jerry Poggle. You didn't see Jerry Poggle, asking any tough questions back in 05 or 06 or 07, or even after Making Murder came out and he's retired. You constantly oftentimes see, what happened here was everybody kind of circles the wagons and everybody gets their stories straight and, and they all, protect each other and do goofy things and make outrageous statements just because, they just figure if you say something that people believe it, when in reality, everybody's got to do their own research and be skeptical.
Yeah.
Sure. Here in the UK, we had a case called the Soham murders. 2 little girls were murdered, and the culprit was apprehended when the girlfriend of the culprit referred to one of the girls in the past tense by saying she was a nice girl because she was in her class at school. I've yet to find anybody that ever questioned Mike Holbach when he refers to Teresa Holbach, and Teresa's still only a missing person, and he says the grieving process could last days. I've yet to find any evidence of any journalist actually at the time questioning what Mike has just said. Given the fact that it's in the UK, it's helped solved a murder. What on earth is going on with Wisconsin journalists?
I mean, as far as I think I heard the question. Your question, Paul, was what was going on with Wisconsin journalists, why they weren't
Yes.
questioning Mike
Yep.
Hallbuck. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Let's see. Well, yeah, and I was not in Wisconsin at the time that Teresa
Sure.
what was killed. So I mean, if I had been there, obviously I think I would have probably been a lot more aggressive, and unfortunately back at that time frame, you had a lot of reporters that were on the case that that weren't as aggressive or just kind of took things for granted. And you could, there was a lot of, and I can say this now looking back on it because I wasn't there. And I mean, you could see a lot of lazy journalism, whereas people are just sticking, and it's evident. I thought Making a Murder does a good job of showing some of the lazy journalism, where you see these people just kind of standing out there, just asking a question and then not following up or asking a good follow-up question. And that certainly was true throughout the trial too, as you watch them question or just put a microphone in front of Ken Kratz, but I think that's certainly true with Mike Hallbuck, that nobody was really, asking tough questions or looking at what his motivation was, or, why him and Brian Hilgess are always hanging around together, and doing things together, and just those kinds of things. So, I think that if anything, hopefully, the original Making a Murder showed too that sometimes some of the reporters, are just a bunch of lapdogs, and and aren't really, taking their job as seriously, as they should have, as far as being skeptical of the information that's being provided to them by the police and prosecution, and they should also be out there kind of, beating the bushes and doing their own research, even if it's uncomfortable, because obviously back in 05, in 06 and leading up to the trial, I mean, you look at the coverage, and how like the Avery family was treated, and and how many people really were doing stories that were, examining the evidence or the holes in the case, or going to talk to, Steve's parents, and and there weren't that many. A lot of them were just kind of taking it for granted, that what the police and Ken Kratz were saying, was true, and or I think they were probably going along too, especially the TV stations, just because they wanted to be, make sure that they weren't getting squeezed out of the information, and getting cut out of, the news and what's going on and stuff. And unfortunately, because of that, the public really didn't get, the full in 06, leading up to Stephen's trial and Brendan's trial, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Am I right in saying that you once quoted that for a journalist in Wisconsin for those journalists to have questioned what the state were doing, it's difficult for journalists there to go into Wisconsin and to basically to tell everybody in Wisconsin the Packers suck.
That one, Paul, your question kind of really broke up on me. I had a hard time hearing on my end on that one.
Sorry. Yeah, no, it was. We are getting a bit of echo. Let me see if I can mute mine, and Tracy can ask hers.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I was just wondering, John, at the time of Stephen and Brendan's trial, you were working at the Omaha World Herald. Were you aware of the trial at that time?
Was I aware of the trial at the time? I was in, let's see, 05 and 06, 07, I would have been in Omaha, Nebraska. So I had limited, knowledge of kind of what was going on a regular basis. Probably the most I knew was just what was being reported on the Associated Press on the wire. Yeah. So I just kind of knew scant, small bare bones details of the case while it was going on in real time, back in 05 and 06. And then when I moved back to Nebraska at the end of 2012, that's kind of when I was able to start becoming more familiarized with the case. And then certainly, when Making a Murder came out, myself, like everybody else, really got brought up to speed. And then I did a lot of research, on my own, going out to Manitowoc and Manitowoc County, trying to do, looking into like some of the history of some of the sheriff's department employees, kind of what was their background.
Yeah.
Just because the one thing that also kind of got me interested, or intrigued, I should say, about the Making a Murder case with Stephen and Brendan was the fact that the police, for all those days, just to kind of just be out at the property, where it's always been my experience that the police only can, stay at a property for like 48 hours, or actually, 24 hours usually. A judge usually doesn't give them like a full week just to, mess around, or just hang out, at somebody's property. So the fact that, that Manitowoc County and Calumet County was able just to spend days on end just hanging around the Avery City, that was peculiar to me as a journalist of I don't know, covering hundreds of murder cases in several states, over the years, and having familiarity with the court system. That was just really unusual to begin with. And then the fact that if you look at it, the November 8th, that Tuesday of November 8th of 2005 is really like the most important day in the whole case, in my opinion, just because it's the same day that like everything, all these key pieces of evidence, get, including the key actually, are all found that day. You have the key found. You have in the afternoon, it's like Jason Yost, is hanging around the burn pit, and then that's when the bones are found. And I'm pretty sure that was also the same day too that the license plate was found smashed up, in the broken station wagon that was on the edge of the property. Just all of those kinds of, all three of those events, just in and of themselves are all suspicious on their own. Obviously, the key got the most play and the most coverage in Making a Murder, and probably rightfully so. But in my opinion, just the recovery of the license plate after they had already done a search, a massive search on the property 2 or 3 days earlier, that Sunday, especially they spent the whole day going through the property, and didn't find that, those license plates or anything else of any substance, and then somehow you decide that you're going to call for another search, because you didn't find it, and then you're going to find it, and then it's found under the way that it is, where that volunteer firefighter, from Brilliant, I mean, kind of hangs around with the, the Calumet Sheriff's Department people. I mean, he's going to be the one to find it. Just, okay, good. All right. Paul, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can still hear you. I was gonna ask you because
Okay.
I know we're
Anyway,
running short of time.
Okay, gotcha. All right. But anyway, I was also really interested in just trying to get to the bottom of what really happened factually, whether that was what.
Oh dear, we do seem to be having troubles with with our connections on this one. Let's see if John will come back. Hopefully he will. Just to finish off, and then please everybody go to the Linda and Becca on Check and Conviction. Hi, John. One final question, if I may. Don't know if John can hear me. Hi, John. Can you hear me?
Okay, you got me back then.
Yeah. Just one final question. Any plans on a follow-up to Wrecking Crew?
Okay. All right. Paul, can you guys hear me again then?
I can hear you now, yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, good. Okay. All right. Yeah, now I can then. So, all right.
And any plans on a follow-up?
But the Yeah, what's that?
Any plans on a follow-up to the Wrecking Crew book?
Any plans for a follow-up with Wrecking Crew?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I would, like all of us, I'm really interested, Paul, in finding out what happens next as far as, with this, with the Court of Appeals, and also with Zellner's latest motion, finding this Mr. Sawinski and, this really intriguing witness that I really think that, really kind of changes the dynamics of the facts of the case, and, is really instrumental to helping illustrate the fact that, what are we up to now? That Zellner's uncovered it, 5 or 6, I think 6, Brady violations right now. So this one seems to be perhaps her most interesting one that she's come up with, amongst all the other ones that were all really important so far. But I think that now kind of it's up to the court to issue a ruling as far as the fact that that this individual, Mr. Sawinski, had contacted the sheriff's department very early on in the case, and according to him, and also with the absence of records as well,
Yeah.
it seems like there was an effort to make sure that Mr. Buting and Mr. Strang had never known about this guy, and had the information about him. And had they had that information, Paul and Tracy, I think that would have changed substantially their approach and their strategy going in the trial. And absolutely, they would have did a lot different type of questioning when it came to Bobby Dassey. It's. I mean, if you kind of look at the case now, as we all do, years after the fact, it's interesting that you look at Ken Kratz and who he is, and then the fact that, like, the two most important people that he kind of aligns himself with, are Scott Todich and Bobby Dassey. I think that in a lot of respects, probably, kind of says a lot about the kind of people that Ken Kratz hangs around with, and that he looks up to. And I think that, if Ken Kratz could go out for pizza and beer with somebody, he would probably, go with Bobby Dassey and Scott Todich for a beer and a pizza. They'd probably be two of the top people he'd like to hang around with and stuff. And, that is what it is. But and I bring that up from the standpoint of, I mean, you just look at all the lies and the misleading statements these guys were allowed, to get away with, back at the time of the trial. And a decent prosecutor would have probably, been skeptical and, been like, come on, tell me what really happened, and Scott Todich, obviously, his background speaks of itself. I mean, he's a longtime woman abuser, and you just look at his phone calls, when he's eavesdropping on the phone with Barb and, and Stephen Avery from a few years ago. I mean, that just kind of tells you what kind of guy this guy is, and, that information about, what he was writing about Kathleen Zellner recently. So anyway, but those were the kinds of people that Ken Kratz needed to make his case, and have success, in the courtroom. And, and obviously, as we know now, the facts of the case are probably drastically different than what Ken Kratz, and Scott Todich and Bobby Dassey, said had happened, in a Wisconsin courtroom back in, 2007. So it's really up to all of us as individuals, in different roles, to do our best now to get to the bottom of what the real facts of the case are, and I think we're trying really hard to do that. And I think certainly with Zellner, and this most recent unbiased witness that came forward, that's certainly points to a lot of optimism going into 2021 and kind of where the case will go. So we'll just have to see, as far as how the Court of Appeals, what they decide, and whether or not the case gets sent back to Judge Suckowitz for an evidentiary hearing. So we'll stay tuned. But I really want to hold off on doing a follow-up book, on the case
Yeah.
until a lot more information gets
Yes.
sorted out. I just feel that it would be an injustice, to write a book that would be speculating at this point in time. I'd like to have a better idea of where things go from here. So,
Absolutely. Well, Tracy, I fear that we've run out of time, unless you had something else you wanted to ask. But I would like to thank John for your frankness and coming on and speaking to us, and having, obviously completely up to date, knows exactly what's going on in all of this. John, I think you're just a fantastic journalist. I followed your work for a long time, and please just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I really appreciate that. And like I said, I'll certainly, if there's an opportunity to keep covering, Kathleen Zellner and her efforts, to uncover the facts of the case or expose any wrongdoing, in the court system, I'll certainly be along and try to make the time to write an article and share that with all of you guys, here in the coming days and weeks ahead. Okay.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Many thanks, John. Enjoy the rest of the evening. I'll be in touch.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. Have a great night.
Thanks very much, John.
You too.
Okay, just to finish off then, if everybody wants to head over to Linda and Becca's channel for their live chat. Once again, many thanks, John. Many thanks, Tracy.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
You're very welcome. Bye for now.